We're sorry, the number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.
Hey everyone, how you doing out there in Final Cut Pro land? It's October? Yeah, it's October, right? Yeah, it's October the Thursday, October the 6th already. So we're going to check in with Final Cut Pro news, the latest news. There's a couple of things I'm going to talk about, but the main thing we're here for today is I have this it's not new. I've been using it for years, and I've been using it with Final Cut Pro, but I finally got myself around to actually specifically getting a Final Cut Pro workflow. And this is like a Scratchpad, copyboard, pasteboard, where you can drag something from the timeline, you can copy something from the timeline, and it'll stay in this Scratchpad, and then you can paste it back in the timeline somewhere else. And it's not like the Make Effects preset. That's 5 clicks to make one effect preset. This is just Apple C, and it's available. Apple C, and it's available. You can do more organization from there if you want to. When I show you this, I use it for titles, custom titles. I use it for copying clips back and forth. And the biggest thing is use it for transitions. I can select a transition, save it to this clipboard, reuse the transition anywhere I want in Final Cut Pro. And I can save the set that I'm making specifically for Final Cut Pro and export it and have it available at all times. We'll go over that in a few minutes, what that application is. But I'm really, the fact that Final Cut Pro to this date, you can't copy a transition. I mean, you can copy and paste. Yeah, but this is an actual area that you can save. It's a little floating clipboard that you can save. You can copy and paste one, copy and paste here, then I'm down the other end of the line. Which one was it? I don't know. Did this one? No, it wasn't that one. So, and you only have one level of copy and paste from Final Cut. So, in Mac OS itself. So, this is more specific than that, and I really like the way it works. It's working really good, especially, like I said, for transitions, which you can't do anything with in Final Cut. So what do we have going on here today? Let me just double check, make sure we're up and running. I'm going to do a post. Make sure the comments are coming through. They should be. There we go. Yep. We are comment away. We'll have the comments. If you post a good comment, I'll put it up on the screen. So let's talk about some Final Cut Pro news first, and then we'll go over. So the biggest, it's been a very slow summer for Final Cut. That's usual. That's very, very usual. 2 years ago, I think we got Final Cut Pro 10.4.9 in August. That's highly unusual, especially the fact that it had features. So this summer has been very slow, but the summer now went through September, and now it's into October. One of the things that we want to talk about, is there going to be a Final Cut Pro, is there going to be an Apple Mac event in October? Now, the one guy said no, that Apple is just going to use a bunch of press announcements, right? But, there's a lot of stuff coming out in October that they've already announced. They have announced Ventura, the next major version of Mac OS is coming out. M2 Mac Mini, maybe a Mac Mini Pro. M2 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. That's the one I'll be most tempted by for me to update. I have a 2021 M1 Max MacBook Pro 16-inch. And since this has become my main machine, I will be tempted to update to the M2 version if that's real, if that's really happening. The reason I question is because it's only been 1 year, and that's an unusual time frame between MacBook Pro updates. Then we have, what about the M2 Mac Pro? Everybody's talking about. Where in the heck's the Mac Pro? October, November is the end of the 2-year transition cycle that they announced at WWDC 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. No, it was 2 years ago. They said it's going to be about a 2-year cycle to transition all the Macs over to Apple Silicon. That's now. That's October, November, when the first one was released. So 2 years later, here we are. I'd be pleasantly surprised if the Mac Pro came out. I'd be very pleasantly surprised. But I'm also very curious what it's going to look like. I don't think it's going to be as big as the 2019 Mac Pro. I don't know for a fact, but that 2019 Mac Pro is a real monster. It has 8 PCIe slots. 8. Not 4, 5, 6, 8 PCIe slots. Everything is modular. It's a really great machine. So I'm not sure. They don't want to step themselves backwards and get themselves in another corner where the pros don't have what they need. I have no idea how they're going to solve that. They're not going to go back to the trash can. That was ridiculous. Small, compact, parts couldn't be changed and all. I can't see that happening. I can see a smaller form factor Mac Pro coming out with the M2 Ultra, M2 Pro chips, whatever. That will also be tempting for me to get. What else? An M2 iPad Pro, I've heard rumors about that. And this is perhaps a wild card. What about the iMac? What about an M2 iMac? If they're going to do this. And also they've talked about perhaps a new Apple TV with a new chip. So those are all the things that are in the wind, so to speak, as possible items at an Apple Mac event in October. Now, could they just redo it on a press release? First off, that's a lot of press releases. And then the Mac Pro, the M2 Mac Pro doesn't deserve its own special event? That seems bizarre to me. If it was just the M2 MacBook Pros, I understand that because they're not changing in form factor. But we've never seen this M2 Mac Pro. We've never seen it. It's a brand new machine, brand new Mac. The iPad, the Ventura is brand new. That doesn't deserve, I guess they gave it some attention back at the iPhone event in September. 30-Day Filmmaker says, I just want a 27-inch iMac again with M1 Max. Well, I think everything is going to be M2 at this point. I think from this point forward, everything except maybe the very low end, everything new is probably going to be M2, Ultra, Max, Pro, whatever they want to call it. So it'd be M2. And I know some people have said they're not going to do a 27-inch iMac. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that for a second. I think they absolutely are working on a larger form factor iMac than 24 inches, which is the one they have right now. I think they are working on a 27 or larger iMac with the M2 processors. Good evening, Richard, from Austria. Linz, thank you very much. Helmets. A nice Final Cut Pro update would be nice. Okay, now let's talk about that. 2020, the first Apple Silicon Macs were announced. At the same time, Final Cut Pro 10.5. 2021, 1 year ago, the new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros came out. The M1 Pro and the M1 Max, 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro came out. What else came out? Final Cut Pro 10.6. So if indeed there is going to be an Apple event, even if there's not going to be an Apple event, if they do just a press release, which in my opinion is very boring, it's a very boring thing to do a press event if you have a brand new Mac Pro, maybe a brand new Mac Mini Pro, Ventura itself, and a new version of Final Cut Pro. But who knows? You know who knows? The people that normally do these films for Apple. They know if they did films or not, if they filmed them already in October or in November, in August and September. If they filmed them, they know that there's going to be an event, at least very likely. But either way, I think it's a very, very real possibility that we're going to see Final Cut Pro 10.7 this fall. Not 100%, but it's a good possibility. I also think it will be an M2 for the iMac 27-inch, absolutely. I would be happy if we could just get audio mixers like they have in Premiere and Final Cut Pro. You and me both. You and me both. Audio needs some serious work in Final Cut. Can you do audio in Final Cut? Of course you can. Of course you can. I do simple stuff in Final Cut audio, but anything serious, I take to Logic. Most people, if you're doing a film, they take it to Pro Tools. Pro Tools, that's where it mostly goes. Mixers would be nice to be able to mix rolls using sliders, faders in real time. Not only mix rolls, how about having a master fader? It's been 11 years, we still don't have a master volume fader for Final Cut. Anywhere. There's no master. Yes, I know you can do compound clips. I know all about that, jumping in and out. Very, very clunky. So I'd like to see a mixer as well. I just can't see a new Mac Pro intro without an event. I agree with you, Eric. I'm not convinced that we're going to see a Mac Pro intro. Maybe a preview. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they indeed showed us the Mac Pro and it was available for sale this year. That would be fantastic. Even if there's no Apple event, new stuff will be announced. Absolutely. That's the good thing. And I'm thinking new hardware, Final Cut Pro 10.7. New hardware, Final Cut Pro 10.7. Especially if the Mac Pro is announced. Even if they said, here's the Mac Pro, it'll be available in December or the first quarter of 2023. That would be fine. That would be fine. I'm not in any hurry for a Mac Pro. I have the 2019 and I have my 2021 MacBook Pro, so I'm kind of set. One of the things I will fly to Vietnam next week and start filming a lot with the iPhone 14 Pro. Well, look, hey, you and me both. I'm not going to Vietnam, but I got the 14 Pro Max, and I traded in my 13 Pro Max to Apple, and I got my refund already. That's already in the cards. So I got this for about half price. Agreed. If a larger iPad screen was announced, I would bet that Final Cut Pro for Logic or Logic for iPad OS would be announced at the same time. people have been talking about that for a long time, about Final Cut Pro on the iPad. I'm pretty sure they have a version working on the iPad, on iOS. I'm pretty sure. But it's going to be a scaled down version compared to what the Mac can do for a lot of reasons. Number one, I have over 1,000 plugins. What am I going to do with those? Can't use them on the iPad. The other thing is these RAIDs that I have. They're connected via Thunderbolt. Can't connect them to an iPad either. So those are two big drawbacks to using the iPad. But however, being on the subway, taking a ride and doing some editing on the iPad, that's fine. I think it'll just be a scaled down version. There's Logic stuff coming too, absolutely. Logic, don't forget about our friend Logic. I use Logic almost as much as Final Cut. Remember the letter they wrote to Apple, and Apple responded they were committed to the pros. Has anything really changed since then? I think perhaps something has been happening behind the scenes. They didn't say it was going to be public. They said they were going to meet with pros. Didn't that's what they said? Something like that? Yeah, that's what they said. So that would not surprise me that has been happening already. It's not public. These are not public events. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to go over a couple of things. First off, let's go over this. Let me just get my... Tyler says, you can use third-party plugins on the iPad, but developers have been slow to adopt audio units embedded in iPad that app that GarageBand or Logic can see. Well, yeah, but what am I going to do with the ones that I have? I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on these plugins over the years. I know how they run. I've made custom versions. I'm just going to abandon them to work on an iPad? No, that's not going to happen. And I really doubt that a version of Final Cut on the iPad would be a full version. I think it'll be like an iPad Lite, or they might just call it Final Cut, not Final Cut Pro, Final Cut for the iPad, something like that. When it comes out, it'll come out probably eventually. But at this point, LumaFusion has light years ahead of that. Light years ahead of doing an NLE on the iPad. So, and you can export from LumaFusion into Final Cut Pro. So if I was going to edit on an iPad, well, I do occasionally, and I started using LumaFusion on my iPhone, believe it or not, in vertical position. That's the way it seems to work best on the iPhone. I've not read anything about updates. What's the latest, Richard? Well, the latest is we know Ventura is coming. Everybody is saying there's going to be the new M2 MacBook Pros, 14 and 16 inch, the M2 version. And then you have a new, listen, when's the Mac Mini been updated? It's been a long time. It's like the simplest Mac there is. So why hasn't that been updated? They're talking about a Mac Mini Pro. That's what they're talking about. So, but what I'm saying is, and then the Mac Pro, 2 years is right now from when they announced that the Intel to Apple Silicon transition would take place. They said 2 years. They said about 2 years. They didn't say exactly deadline 2 years. It's now. 2 years is now, October, November. So if they indeed stick to that timeline that they set, nobody set it for them. They set a 2-year timeline. The Mac Pro is due. What does the Mac Pro look like? The Apple Silicon Mac Pro look like? We don't know. One thing it's not going to look like is the trash can. They're not going to shrink that gigantic 2019 Mac Pro down into a trash can again. They've already admitted that was a big mistake. I think it'll be smaller than the 2019, maybe 4 PCIe slots, maybe 6, smaller in size because you don't need all that cooling. With the M2, I don't think. So we'll have to see how that goes. But if they introduce the new Mac Pro, doesn't it make sense that they have a new version of Final Cut Pro to go with it? That's the perfect app to demonstrate a new Mac Pro. On a new Mac Pro is the new version of Final Cut, which would be 10.7. But who knows? I mean, 10.7 could come out first the next year. But I'm saying if the Mac Pro comes out, then I'm saying that Final Cut Pro 10.7 comes out as well. Apple will also have the raw material problems and have to adjust accordingly. But hasn't that been going on for years and it really hasn't affected them? I mean, Tim Cook was known for his supply chain expertise. That's why Steve Cook is from the Sex Pistols. That's why Steve Jobs, by the way, his death date was, I think, was yesterday. Steve Jobs was an incredible visionary. Steve Jobs hired Tim Cook back in, I think, the late 90s because of his supply chain expertise. He's been doing incredibly well. If a developer's made an audio plugin, likely he's made a VST, VST3, an audio unit. The catch is they have to make their own app with the plugin embedded. iLok is the challenge, right? He's talking about the iPad. I've been exclusively on Final Cut Pro Editor for years. My new job wants me to use Premiere exclusively, and it's rubbish in comparison. I want my magnetic timeline back. I had that issue. I was the post-production supervisor down at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. And when I was hired, I had no Avid experience on my resume, zero. But I had tons of editing. I'm a Final Cut Pro trainer, all kinds of Final Cut Pro stuff. When they interviewed me, they said, now we have Avid on a PC. Well, that's two strikes right there. Avid PC. I don't know anything about PCs. I knew little about Avid. Is that something you can work with? I said, absolutely. Absolutely. I said, I absolutely can learn Avid. I know how to edit. That's not the issue. I know how to film. I know how to do audio. Absolutely, I can edit on an Avid. Well, of course, I knew nothing about the Avid, so as soon as I got the job, I downloaded every Avid PDF, manual, article that I could find and collected them. And then I said, how do I do this in Avid? Looked it up. Oh, that's how you do it. Oh, here it is. Clunky, but I know how to do it. So I edited on the Avid on the PC for a while. And then I snuck. We had a Power Mac. I don't think it was a G5. I think it was one of the first Intel, but I'm not sure. With Final Cut Pro 7 down in the theater. My edit suite was on the 5th floor, so I snuck that up there. I convinced the boss let me use that. So I used that. I could do a lot better work, was doing great work. People were saying, oh, that looks great. Did you do that in the Avid suite? I said, yes, I did that in the Avid suite, but I didn't use Avid. I used Final Cut Pro. So once they got used to it, wasn't an issue, and I switched over to Final Cut Pro completely. Originally 7, and then we went over to Final Cut Pro 10 when that came out. But initially I stayed on 7 for a while, but I started editing on 10. No Mac Mini Pro, in your opinion. Where will it fit in with the Studio and the Mac Pro? There's definitely a place for a Mac Mini Pro. Definitely a place for it. At least a new Mac Mini. Even if it's not the Mac Mini Pro, that's fine. But a new M2 chip Mac Mini. I still lean towards early November for an event. I would agree with you, Eric, if there was an October event. But if there's not an October event, I don't see them skipping October and going to November, unless it's some kind of an issue with timing. That could be. They could do an early November event. But I'm kind of expecting an announcement for an Apple event soon. I'm about 50-50. It could be press releases or it could be an actual Apple event, but I'm hoping for an Apple event. Of course, I think we all are. Alexander says, I use Apple Motion a lot with Final Cut, need more features like a possibility to extend 3D USDZ possibilities. I would love that. Absolutely. I've heard about that a lot. Well, I hope I can convince them to let me do the same. Thanks, Richard. I didn't get their permission, Jack. I just did it. So if I didn't have the Mac Pro downstairs, the tower, I would have brought projects home. And I did that as well because I have more plugins and stuff. I brought projects home did some of my magic on Final Cut Pro, and then I brought them back in. Like I went on a Friday over the weekend. I didn't work 20 hours a day, but I worked a couple hours because I knew I could do it better in Final Cut. And then when they saw the result, they said, that looks great. Did you do that in the Avid room? And I'd say, I did it in the Avid room, unless I did it from home. But eventually they found that I was using Final Cut. Wasn't the issue. I was the post supervisor. It was really my decision. It's just when I got there, that's what they had installed. That's very true. That's what I should do. Yeah, just take one or two little projects. Don't work yourself to death. Take one or two little projects home. Do a better job if you can. Bring it in. Don't say anything. Just say, hey, I worked on this over the weekend. What do you think? And see what happens. But the thing is, I was a post supervisor. I had a little bit of pull. Better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Exactly. If I thought they would be upset. Now, here's the thing. The person that purchased the Avid system, when I got there, it was already a year old. It was already a year old. They never used it. It was already a year old when I got in there. So it was already, the service contract was expiring. It's all kind of issues. And then the PC graphics card went up, and I knew nothing about PCs. I don't know anything about them. I don't know how to troubleshoot them or anything. So we eventually switched over to the Mac, and then I lasted 8.5 years. Then I got tired of driving 3 hours a day round trip on a good day, and I left that job. But it was a very, very good job. Very good job. So let's go over here. This is what's happening. Final Cut Pro, a global summit, Apple certification world tour. This is what's happening right now. Notice it says in association with Apple right there at the top. This is Apple official certification. So this is called the FCP Global Summit. This is normally the summit had everybody from around the world converge on Cupertino for 3 to 4 days. And everybody stayed at the same hotel for the most part. We ate at restaurants together. We had coffee together, et cetera, et cetera. This is exactly the opposite of that. This is them going out around the world, 10 different cities. The original summit, everybody came together. They're spreading out for one-day training sessions. So here's the main thing about that. Why that's good, especially if you're looking to get certified. The cost. Tickets are only $125, and they include complimentary certification exam voucher. So that voucher alone is worth $149. So for $125, you're getting a $25 discount, plus you're getting the one-day training, plus you have the exam voucher. The kickoff is in New York City. That's coming up in about a little less than a month. New York City, November the 3rd. That's coming up. I personally don't think Final Cut Pro Logic and iPad will be a light version. If you see everything being worked for stage managers and blah, 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 the possibilities are wonderful. But I have more horsepower on my Mac Pro. I have more horsepower on my iMac Pro. My iMac and my MacBook Pro. The iPad, as good as it is, doesn't have the power. And what are you going to do with all my plugins? You think I'm just going to throw them away? I'm just going to throw my plugins away? What about the screen real estate that I have? There's a lot of, like I said, if you want to edit on the iPad, and I realize a lot of people do, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, but how are you going to do this? Look at the screen real estate I have. This is my live stream right now. Down there in the lower right-hand corner is my live streaming statistics that I can see. Right below me here, you can see, is my audio meter. Your guys' comments are right over there coming up, and I can post them. But look at this screen real estate that I have. And this is only one of my screens. I have 34-inch LG monitor that I've had for years, Thunderbolt. And I kind of need that. If I'm on the subway, I used to ride subway, absolutely edit on an iPad. I absolutely could do that. I really enjoyed last year's being online. So I'm working on a documentary about the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit 2016 to 2019. I'll probably have it out in about late October, early November, right when the Final Cut Pro starts, and you'll see what the original version was like versus the new version. I just dropped in, got to go to bed. I'll watch this on replay. Thanks for all you do, mate. Catch you later. Absolutely, Jack. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. iPadOS 16 on an M1 supports ultra-wide monitors. Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. But if you're going to use ultra-wide monitors, why not just use a MacBook Pro? I mean, I see both things, but why not use LumaFusion now? It's a great filmmaker. I mean, a great NLE. Yes, there's a lot of plug-in packs. I'm not going to rebuy them for the iPad. I'm not going to do that. But I mean, would I use it? Probably. I would get a version and have it, but I think LumaFusion is going to be so far ahead of what Final Cut Pro can be on the iPad. There's many features that LumaFusion has that which Final Cut has. The ability to color code clips, the ability to lock a track in a timeline. It has the advanced magnetic timeline LumaFusion does. You have a magnetic timeline and you have tracks that you can use if you want to lock things. Reason being, in my mind, Touch or Apple Pencil support. That would be very cool. I love the Apple Pencil on my iPad. I'm not sure why it's not on the iPhone yet, but it's not. No, I agree. I'm not against it by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that I don't think that I would use it. I would use it initially just to try it out, like I do with LumaFusion. And if I'm editing, maybe away from my home base, I would use it more. I certainly am curious as to how they would implement it, right? That is absolutely a fact. Anyway, let's go back here. So this is New York City is the first date, Global Summit coming up. It's mainly a one-day training event coming all the different places around the world. Let's see if we can go back there. Yes. New York City, Orlando, Austin, Texas, Chicago, LA, over in Europe, Madrid, Spain, Paris, London, Berlin, and Tokyo. So there's 10 cities that they're doing worldwide, the summit. It's just different than it has been. Let's see a few more things. So, something I support certain plugin makers and certain companies. One of the ones that I'm friends with, and I'm also a big supporter of, is, let me see, where the heck is that? Oh, this one, Ripple Training. Here's a reason why. I bought the DaVinci Resolve 17 training, and look what they did. DaVinci Resolve 18, brand new course just came out, and it's available free because I had the 17 training. I absolutely love when companies take care of their customers that way. Absolutely love that. This just came out, DaVinci Resolve Core Training 18 on Ripple Training. Go there, you can find out. If you have the 17 version, you should have gotten an email that this upgrade is totally free. Steve, thank you. Steve Martin's a good friend of mine. Absolutely fantastic. So we have Ventura coming out, right? That's already been announced? That's already been announced for October. Any day now? I've been working with the beta. As a matter of fact, one of the issues with Final Cut Pro is, here we go. One of the issues is cinematic mode. If you shot your videos on iOS 16, you're not going to be able to edit cinematic mode in the current version of Final Cut, and you need Ventura, which has not officially been released yet. When I found that out, I successfully uploaded the beta of Ventura, and I was indeed able to edit cinematic mode in Final Cut Pro, but you need Ventura. This is really, really a strange thing that happened there. I'm not sure why. We also have the new book from Larry Jordan. It just came out, Final Cut Pro Power Trips. That's nice to have. Very nice to have. It would see more Macs with touch bar. I don't think the touch bar is coming back. I don't think it was that popular. Trying to get tickets to the LA Summit, but tickets haven't shown up yet. Okay, there you go. Ripple Training is aces. Steve and Mark are awesome. Absolutely. They're great guys. Absolutely. I got to meet both of them at the summit, and I met Steve. We hung out together at AB in April. It's at the Super Meet and some other places. We got to meet each other again, so that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So let's go over this clipboard thing that I've talked about. I think I'm done with, let me just check here. Make sure we got all the Dylan Bates. Dylan Bates is awesome too. I hung out with Dylan, the two Final Cut Pro Dylans at NAB last year. I got to meet both of them and hang out at Super Meet and talked a bit. They recognized me from these live streams. They stopped me as I was leaving the convention center. And they said, "Hey, Richard Taylor, we're Final Cut Pro guys on YouTube as well." So we got to, both of them are really cool guys. All right, so let me get back over here. Let's go over this, what I'm talking about with this clipboard. So have you ever, this is my Final Cut Pro timeline. This is just some clips I put together. I got to put that up too. Yeah, that's the other Dylan. So Dylan Bates, absolutely, and Dylan John. Those are the two Dylans that I met at NAB this year. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is just a little timeline I have in Final Cut. You can see I'm live. Just took some pictures with my iPhone 14. And one of the things that I would like to do, so I'm going to turn this title on. Just a basic title. It scrolls a little bit. It moves very slowly. Fades on, moves a little slowly. And yeah, I can copy and paste this anywhere I want. Copy, paste. I have the ability to copy and paste one thing in Final Cut. But what if I have 10 different titles that I'm using in different places in an hour-long timeline? And I customize them. So what do I do then? Well, this is what I do now. This is what I do. Here's a clipboard manager called Copy M. Copy M. So if you notice over here, these little Final Cut Pro icons, I can't enlarge this. I'm not sure if I can. No, I can't. But what I can do is this. So this is just the basic title. I hit Command-C, copy. And notice this changed. This added this new icon over here. Now, this icon is the title I just copied. And there it is. The title I just copied. Right? So I'm going to take this one over the inspector, and I'm going to change it, the text, to my name. Delete it. Okay. Now the title says Richard Taylor TV. Okay? Now I'm going to take this title and put it down here in the lower left-hand corner. Now I'm going to copy this one, Apple C. There's a new title here. This new title is the one I just copied. I can drag it. I don't like dragging it because it makes it into that. Let's not do this. Just click on it. There's the title, the customized title I just made. New location, new text. So, Final Cut, you have one copy and paste. You can copy, paste one thing at a time. This is a Clipboard Manager, but notice it copies the actual data from Final Cut Pro. It's not copying the text, it's actually copying the data. So what I want to do with this, I'm going to add title, and I'm going to call this, first off, I always use FCP first. So it sorts by Final Cut Pro, title, and then I'm going to call it RTV lower left. Okay? Now I know this title, what this title is. So anytime I want to use that title in my project, I just click it. There it is. There it is. And it's easy to identify. Final Cut Pro title RTV lower left tells me exactly what it is. I can have a dozen of these titles. Now, if you get copy M, you want to make sure you hit this little pin icon. If you don't, it disappears when you click on Final Cut. So click this and it won't disappear. It'll stay, it'll be available for you at all times. I don't know. I've had it for years. It might be $20, something like that in the App Store. I'm not sure. Let's actually just go over and look. Let's look at the App Store. Let's see where it is. Here we go, right here. Copy M for Mac. So here it is, Copy M for Mac, Best Clipboard Manager for Mac. They don't even talk about the Final Cut Pro stuff, but it's really, really handy. It does regular screenshots, and you can edit the text and all kinds of things. But I'm talking about using it for Final Cut Pro, of course, images and stuff. I'm talking about specifically using it for Final Cut Pro. That's what I'm talking about. So let's go back to Final Cut Pro. Let's go back. So that's one of the things. You can do titles, custom titles, whatever you want. You can, I'm going to delete some of these. We don't need those right now. You can also just copy a clip. Now, once again, watch this. I can copy this clip, Apple C, and there's my clip. Once again, I can name it, edit title. I can name it whatever I want. But if I want that clip somewhere else, it put it in, actually put it in at the playhead location, so I'll put it there. It puts it in at the playhead location, the same one I just copied. Now here's an interesting thing. If you take two clips and copy them, it actually merges those clips. It merges those clips into one clip. So where is the, let me see. Here you go. So it actually merged these into one clip, those two clips into one. See, that's not in a storyline. It's not a division there that I can see. It's actually merged two clips into one. So let's take that out, take that out, take that out. So you can copy clips, you can copy custom titles, regular titles, have them available anytime you want. I'll show you how to make a Final Cut Pro list. You can export it and have it forever. Now, I wouldn't put a lot of clips in it because I'm sure the database would get very, very large with clips. This is one of the things that I really, really wish Final Cut Pro has, but it doesn't. The ability to copy a transition. So this is a simple move. Simple move. I'm going to copy this. Watch, copy and paste when I copy. There it is. That's the move transition right there. So I'm going to add title, and I'm going to once again use FCP. I'm going to put transition second, and then I'm going to put move. And if I move left or move right, I'd also include that there. Okay? Now, let's click on this transition, and there it is. There's the transition. Now, I understand you can copy and paste one in Final Cut. You can copy and paste it. But what if I have 10 different transitions? I got to go find it, copy it in Final Cut, and then go where I want to go and paste it. Or I can keep them in copy and paste. I can keep them right here. And they're available anywhere I want. Anywhere I scroll on this timeline, I can put the transition right there. I don't have to worry about it. Here's the name for me. It's a descriptor for me. Here's the name. It also takes text and other things as well, but this is phenomenal. Transitions alone. You can't save transitions in Final Cut. You make custom transitions, you can't save them. So this is why, and you could, I don't know how many, you could have 100. You can search for them by using the search bar. But I notice here, I have one called FCP, number 3. The shortcut's number 3. My shortcuts, unrated. I could rate them if I wanted to. But I have a category, Final Cut Pro. So because I have that category, I can export it. Export app data. So in this case, it comes up all items, but I don't want all items. I want selected lists. Choose Final Cut Pro, and then export this somewhere. And you have this available on other systems. Export. Now I have if I have a dozen titles, if I named them properly, so they're descriptive, I have them anywhere I want them, anywhere I carry that data. And of course, you got to buy the app. I don't remember. I've had it for years. I use it for copying and pasting text and pictures and stuff. Now, the one weird thing is screen grabs I can't drag them to Final Cut. I've noticed that. So here's screen grabs. So I'm going to do an area, copy. There it is. For some reason, this doesn't go to Final Cut. I can't drag it. It won't go. I'm not sure why that doesn't work, but still, it's something else that's available. It has screen in 10 seconds, window with shadow, and area. So for some reason, I can't drag these to Final Cut. Don't know why, but I can't. Let's open, so there we go. So what do you think? $20, you have a Scratchpad and Scratchpad for Final Cut Pro, but you can save a dozen different titles. If I'm working on a project right now, it's about 30 minutes long, and I'm using different titles that I want to use over and over again, and different transitions that I want to use over and over again. And like I said, Final Cut Pro, you can copy once, paste, but you only have one layer in the copy and paste place. This one, I can have a dozen. And if I name them properly, I can just access them anywhere on my timeline I want. I don't have to go from the beginning of the timeline, go to the end of the timeline, back and forth. The palette just stays right there. The palette just stays wherever you put it. So what do you think? I'm not selling this. I'm not selling it. I'm just saying it's a pretty cool little app. I really like it. Yes, no, everybody likes it. Thanks for this tip. Absolutely. What else do we have here? Final Cut Pro, TweetDeck, Global Summit. We covered that. Copy and paste. I think that's basically what I wanted to talk about. I wish the Final Cut Pro Summit was in person in Cupertino. I really enjoy that. So my suggestion to Future Media Concepts is to do, if you're going to do this world tour again next year, kick it off with the usual Final Cut Pro Summit, where everybody comes together at Cupertino at the Juniper Hotel for 3 or 4 days. And then from there, you can launch your world tour to other cities to people that can't make it. But the Final Cut Pro Summit 2016 to 2019, those 4 years, was not this. It was not a training day, single training day. This was the world coming together at one location, and training was there. We got to eat dinner together and lunch and bagels and coffee and the whole 9 yards. It was my favorite event of the year. So I think it's going to return next year. That's what I think. I think it will return next year. I think we'll see the return of the traditional Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, and hopefully at the Juniper. The Juniper was perfect. Absolutely perfect for the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. Let me just see. I'm just going to check while everybody's here to see if Final Cut Pro is out. I doubt it. I mean, a new version. But just in case. Nope, it's not. It is not Final Cut. So this is another tip for you. If a new version of Final Cut Pro has been announced, a lot of times it won't be in the update section. But if you search for Final Cut Pro, click on it. I go back and forth a few times. It'll show up here before it will show up down here. That's just a little tip. That's what I do. I do the search for it. And iMovie's supposed to be updated as well. We'll have to see how that works. But anyway, if you're editing cinematic mode in Final Cut Pro, it doesn't work, except you have to be on Ventura. Ventura's not been released yet. It works in the beta 7. There's a beta 8 out now. I'm not gonna update because I'm gonna wait. I have a dual boot partition. I have one version of Mac OS on one and then Ventura on the other. And I'm on the beta. When the Ventura comes out non-beta, I'm going to wipe that version, install the new fresh version, and then I'll start the process of doing my RAID drivers and see if my RAID mounts. I have 3 different RAIDs. I have a GTEC 5 RAID 5, Promise RAID 5, and I have a OWC Flex 8 RAID, soft RAID, which is also a RAID 5. The OWC is absolutely working with Ventura Beta. Their beta version is working with Ventura Beta, so I don't think that'll be an issue. But these Promise and GTEC that I have are very, very old. They're like the Pegasus 2. They're working for me now. If they work in Ventura, I will be very pleasantly surprised. Very pleasantly surprised. If they don't, as long as the OWC one does, I will update, do a dual update, or if I get the new MacBook Pro or the new Mac Pro, that'll be on Ventura for sure. So what do you think? Apple event? No Apple event. I'm 50-50. It could happen. I just don't know. I'm not sure about it. So let me see what's happening over there on Twitter. So So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the Mac Pro. I'm not sure about Final Cut Pro 10.7. But if they do the Mac Pro, with or without an event, I think they'll update to Final Cut Pro 7 at the same time. So that'll be exciting. And that'll probably be October, could be early November, but I'm thinking October. I'm thinking Apple's going to announce it sometime shortly. It's usually they announce it 7 days in advance, sometimes a little longer. But yeah, I'm expecting something to be happening soon. What else do we have? I think that's about it for today. So Scratchpad Clipboard Copy M. It works very, very well in Final Cut. Don't forget the Final Cut Pro Global Summit is happening. Oh, I know what I wanted to. There's something else I wanted to talk about. There's a. Let me go to here and then to here. There's somebody else that has. Somebody else. Oh, here it is. I want to give them credit for this. This is a free Final Cut Pro course over at Udemy. Mastering Video Editing with Final Cut Pro Ultimate Course. You purchase this course. I got it yesterday. It was free. It was free. Whether or not I go through it or not, I don't know. I mean, I'll go through it and see what's going on. But this was a free course. It's right here. Free, Udemy. It's free, thank you. There you go. So I think maybe this guy is the guy that, yeah, it looks like the same guy. This is his course. So you can go over there to Udemy or just go to Final Cut Pro Tips and Tricks, and it's over there. This is the URL, facebook.com/groups, Final Cut Pro Tips, Tricks. And the link is right in that group. That's one of the groups that I manage. We got almost 8,000 members here. And of course, the other one is Final Cut Pro Radio, Final Cut Radio TV. Final Cut Radio TV. What do you think? Useful information? Alexander says, I use Copy Clip and can save a lot of clipboard text and use to paste to Final Cut Pro also. And it's free. Does Copy, I have that as well. Does Copy Clip do more than just text and pictures though? Does it copy Final Cut Pro data? Can you copy a transition? Not the text from the transition, not the the name of it, the actual transition, and paste it. I'm sure that Copy M is not the only one. I have Copy Clip as well. I haven't used it for a while. Since Copy M can do it, and I've had Copy M for years, and I use it all the time for text and pictures, this is the one I'm talking about. Other ones might be able to do the same thing, but I like having that clipboard available inside of Final Cut. I can use 5 different transitions customized. I can use 5 different titles customized right at my fingertip. Single click, it's inserted into Final Cut. Single click, it's inserted into Final Cut. I like that. If I want to copy 4 or 5 clips and use them someplace else, B-roll, whatever, I can do that, and I can name each clip so it's a descriptor so I can locate it. Final Cut, you can copy one and paste one. Copy one and paste one. If I got an hour-long clip and I want a transition from the beginning, I scroll to the beginning, copy it, scroll to the middle, paste it. He says, right? I'm not sure what right means. So anyway, I think we're good for today. What do you think? Final Cut news. I think that's it for the day. I think I've covered that. Let me just check on, I'll go on Twitter and check. I'm still curious as to if there's going to be an Apple event. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about three things. If the Mac Pro is coming out in October, November, I'm not sure if there's going to be a Mac Pro event. John Gruber, is that his name? John Gruber? He's the one that put down in everybody's mind. He says he's not going to be an Apple event, just going to be press releases. That could be. But that would be a little disappointing, especially if the Mac Pro is coming out. The Mac Pro doesn't deserve its own event? Come on. I mean, it's not the biggest seller for Apple, I realize that, but do the Mac Pro, do the Ventura, do Final Cut Pro 10.7, do the Mac Mini, whatever version, the Mac Mini M2, the new MacBooks. They don't deserve their own press, but if you're doing one, you can have it. The new iPad, M2 iPad Pro. That's enough to do an Apple event. They've done 2 events, one in September, October, November in the past. So I think there's enough there to do an Apple event, but we'll see. It'll be kind of a little bit boring if they don't, but we'll see. Let me just check and see what else is going on. I'm checking Twitter, see if there's anything else going on. There's a lot of plugins that I'm not interested in that have been released. I don't think there's just been a very boring couple of months. It's been like Final Cut Pro is updated in June and updated bug fix update in June, bug fix update in August. The last big update was right before NAB in April or end of March. Andre says, thanks. Let's see what's coming. Yeah. So, yeah, will I be disappointed? Not that big of a disappointment if they don't do an event. Just kind of like, it's much more boring. So we'll have to see. Final Cut Pro 7, I mean, they'll never do an event for Final Cut Pro 7 by itself, but they introduce it along with new hardware typically. But anyway, if you're using the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you can't edit your cinematic footage. I shot some 4K footage without being on Ventura. Now, I tested Ventura 7, Beta 7. It works. I presume Beta 8 works, and I presume the new version of the public release of Ventura will work with cinematic. Otherwise, if you shot on iOS 16, you can't edit it on the Mac. You can edit it on the phone or whatever, but not on the Mac. Not without Ventura. With Ventura, it works. Speaking of that, it's a very clunky implementation, the way they have cinematic in Final Cut now. So you expand the timeline to work with the cinematic editor, but keyframes aren't in there. You have to close a cinematic editor and open the video editor in the timeline to get the keyframes. And you can't have them both open at the same time. They should put everything cinematic in one place instead of opening this, closing this, opening this, closing this. Very, very clunky. Very, very clunky the way it works right now. But I do like it. I really like cinematic. The 4K version is cinematic on the new iPhones. I find myself using it all the time. Even if I don't use the cinematic, blurring of the background or blurring of the foreground or focus pulling, even if I don't use it, it's still shooting in 4K. Not ProRes. Cinematic does not shoot 4K ProRes, but it still shoots 4K. So even if I don't use it, yeah, you can blur a little bit if you want to for a nice effect. The other thing about the iPhone 14 Pro Max, before we go, the new self-facing camera, the new selfie camera, is so much better than the iPhone 13 Pro Max. It has autofocus now, but it's just a better camera. And it also shoots 4K cinematic. It also shoots 4K cinematic. The other thing I don't like about the cinematic on the iPhone, you only have a choice of 2 lenses, 1 times optical and 3 times optical. You don't have 0.5, the ultra wide, and you don't have that new 0.2 when you're shooting cinematic. That's the only thing. You can shoot 4K 24, which is my preferred frame rate and my preferred. I shoot everything in 4K except when I use double take, which only shoots 1080p. All right, everyone. My name is Richard Taylor. And subscribe over there at YouTube. Here it is over here. Right there. Let me do that again. Subscribe over there at YouTube, Richard Taylor TV, Facebook, Richard Taylor TV, Instagram, Richard Taylor TV, and Twitch TV, Richard Taylor TV, and Twitter, Richard Taylor TV. Until the next time, if there's any breaking news, I'll try to come back on live ASAP. Follow along, subscribe over there at YouTube channel so you'll be notified whenever I go live. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you very much.